All right. Welcome to Q&A with Tech Services. I am Olivia Radcliffe, and I am here with the brilliant Sam Strotman. So, Sam, you want to give your bio, your intro, who you are, and what you do at eBeam?
Well, first I had to look for the brilliant guy, but if it's just me, I'm Sam Strotman, and you said I'm E-BEAM's president and chief operating officer. Been here about 13 years. That seems pretty specific. Um, and what do I do? I guess my business card says president. In the end, my job, I like to say, is to help make sure we understand our customers' requirements, whether that's new customers or existing. And then we've got an awesome team here. So my job then is kind of help get stuff out of their way and remove obstacles so we can take care of those requirements and solve problems for people.
Yep. Solve problems for people. I like it. Um, so I wanted to ask you some questions today because I know there's a term that's come up that is, I'm hearing a lot about it, and I just want to get some clarity, and that is the ETO Cliff. Can you explain what this cliff is and why does it matter?
Well, the cliff is just kind of that, right? A drop off of something. In this case, it's the concern about the drop off of a pretty important sterilization capacity in North America specifically, around the regulations around ethylene oxide and ethylene oxide facilities. So if you speak in round numbers, there's about 100 or so ethylene oxide sterilization facilities in North America, and 26 of them have been granted a 2-year exemption to comply with some pretty important regulation. And so in round numbers, a quarter of the ETO sterilization capacity is on a clock until sometime in very early 2028 to meet some regulations or be required to go out of business.
Wow. What would that mean for the sterilization market on a whole?
Well, I think the first indication what it means is that the exemption they were granted came from an executive order from the president. So largely the EPA, the FDA, the federal government's concerned about sterilization capacity and wants to keep those ETO facilities online because they're an important part of the national capacity to do that. So um, it's serious. What would E-BEAM like and what would the industry like is for that capacity to at least remain online, because there's a lot of devices out there that rely on EO and ETO because they have to. And so what we want to do is find ways to help those organizations who have products that can get moved to another modality before there's a crisis and a shortage of capacity.
Yeah. I know we've said on multiple other Q&As and in the marketing and such that even though ETO is another sterilization provider, like eBeam is a sterilization provider, that it's not so much about a direct competition. It's more about, hey, there's a certain number of medical devices out there that need to get sterilized. It is so important that it's out there, that these things are sterilized for consumers, for people who are having surgeries, needing stuff right away. And I like what you brought up of that there are some devices that have to use ETO for one reason or another. And so for these other products that maybe don't necessarily need ETO, it could really help with that cliff a bit if people can come and validate other sterilization modalities like eBeam. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we see this as an opportunity and an important and a critical opportunity for everybody to win, right?
mhm.
There is a need and a place for ETO with specific devices. If that capacity is going to be pinched, then how can the industry as a whole help fill that gap? And then obviously for us, how can eBeam specifically help those companies that have products that are more compatible with eBeam to leave that space and that time for the other organizations that have material that aren't and need ethylene oxide to be sterilized?
Yeah. So how is eBeam going to help those companies?
Well, We thought if there's a crisis and a challenge, we ought to have a relief package, right? That's
There you go.
we've got a problem, you've got a problem, here's some relief. What can we offer you? And so we've put together what we think is a pretty good offering to help companies quickly understand if they can transition, and then if they can get them started rapidly on that process to move from ETO to electron beam.
Yeah, because even though you said like early 2028 is when we're going to see a lot of these deadlines, 2027 is a pretty critical year because you have to do, if you're going to switch, there's a lot of validation and steps to go through that process, right?
Absolutely. And probably most critically, if someone's making a switch from ETO to electron beam, there's certainly material compatibility and material aging and accelerated aging that has to be done. So that gets measured in months. And so to get a change made in 2027, 2026 is definitely the time to start.
Okay. You mentioned material compatibility. That's a good point. What does that process look like to see if your product is compatible with E-beam?
In a perfect world, we understand the bioburden, the customer's current known bioburden. And then we're able to do some things with dosing, essentially get some samples, apply a dose based on that bioburden. And then the customer, the manufacturer, the product's in a great position to be able to then go do their aging testing and other material compatibility things, color, all the things that they'd like to be comfortable is going to work for them and for their customers. They can do that with that dose study.
Okay. So making sure materials are compatible, making sure you understand what your sterilization level actually needs to be to sterilize the product. And then from there, once you're sure things are compatible, it's good to go with the radiation sterilization method. Then you can turn around and start to figure out the fun things of like packaging and what does the main production run look like and all of that fun stuff, right?
Absolutely right. And you can kind of move from there into the more standard validation steps. Standard for us on the E-beam side. I'm sure those are slightly different
Yeah.
from folks with experience on the ETO side, but absolutely, we can get your production dose and answer those important questions next.
So, are there any big differences for people to keep in mind if they're looking at switching between ETO and E-beam? With packaging, we mentioned material compatibility, any materials that just really don't work, all of that.
But absolutely. So we like things in the polyethylene family. Um, we, I mean, I know I'm not. There's just not a lot of immediate things that come to mind from a specific material standpoint, but electronics,
Mhm.
hard, dense things, glass, metal, those tend to be the most obvious signs that electron beam is not the way to go. Ethylene oxide is probably more where people belong, but
Mhm.
we look at the standard plastic kind of materials, fabrics, those sorts of things, and we want to have a specific conversation with you, but those tend to start to lend themselves to electron beam.
Yeah. I know in a previous Q&A, I talked to Dan about gowns and how that could be a really big pull from going from ETO sterilization to E-beam.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like material density, which I
Mhm.
think sometimes, as people who work with electron beam all the time, we like to say low to medium density. Well, what does that mean? If there's airspace, significant airspace in your device or your product, you're a bottle, you're labware, you're a pipette, but also things like people think about fabrics, those sorts of things. There's a lot of airspace in something like that. And those are other indicators that maybe you're likely to be compatible with ED.
Yeah. And then on the packaging side of things, so while we're looking at low to medium density and maybe potentially shifting configurations and such, the other big thing is that the packaging with ETO has to be breathable packaging, right? Like Tyvek, something that allows the gases to penetrate in. With E-beam, you don't have to have that. So that could be a shift for the positive and maybe saving some money on, Tyvek pouchings and stuff and looking at something that doesn't have to be as breathable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are certainly for companies that can make a shift, that have a product that can make a shift, there is plenty of lemonade to be made of these lemons, and start with
Mhm.
packaging, right? Tyvek's important. On the electron beam side, all you're looking for is something that's going to form a sterile barrier and be compatible with electron beam. Well, there is a ton of polyethylene packaging materials out there that are very inexpensive, often can be used with, the packaging equipment that a customer already has, that are significantly less expensive than
Mhm.
Tyvek. And so at the individual device level or the sterile barrier level, I think the news there for people is very good. And then we work on the geometry and the density of a outer pack or the final packaging. But there's a lot of money to be saved in packaging for those who are able to make a switch.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like something definitely worth looking into. Um, can I ask you about timing for a second? And I know without the schedule in front of you, we don't have to get all specific about stuff, but if someone is looking to make a switch, what does that timing look like from that initial call? Hey, Sam, I want to know if this works, to we're sending in truckloads of production.
Um, some of that answer, as it always is it depends. But assuming with this switch from ETO to E-beam, there's materials compatibility that has to happen. So the big timeline is months, certainly measured in months, and it's going to be about materials aging, packaging testing more than anything else that a customer would need to do. I think the good news is that the determination of whether your product can be switched, and a pretty good idea of how long that testing and how much testing you have to do, can be done in weeks. So
Mm.
with a call and the right information, from exchange of information between a prospective customer and the folks here at eBeam, and then material test, we both parties can have a very good idea about how long this has to take, and what steps have to be taken to make the conversion. So answers fast, which I think will do a lot to help people in the current environment.
Yeah. And then once things go into production, what does that production turnaround time look like? Because I know that varies a little bit from ETO as well.
Absolutely. And I'd say another case of lemonade,
It
right?
depends.
Um,
No,
Although in
lemonade.
this case, definitely a case in lemonade, right? So standard turnaround for sterilization at eBeam, um, uh, 2 weeks. In most
Yeah.
cases, far less than that. 5 to 7 days is pretty standard. And unlike ETO, there's no hold time, there's no off gassing. And with a little planning, most of our customers don't see their product in our facility for more than 2 weeks at a time, from initial receipt to processing to out the door. And so I think that is another big advantage for those who are in a position to switch.
Yeah. So how is eBeam Services in particular, uniquely positioned to help companies who are facing this lovely ETO cliff? How are you positioned to help them versus maybe some other service providers? And
Sure.
in
Yeah,
a very, non mud slinging way. There
one, we've got a relief package. So those
you go.
things we talked about, right? That analysis of a customer's product, um, is a no charge and rapidly available. And then for those who are, it seems that analysis points to a quick transition. eBeam will very quickly turn around and, for no charge, perform that initial material test, assuming
Mm.
things like 3 dose levels, which is pretty standard, and some other things. And and most importantly, driven by the customer's already identified bioburden level. That testing is usable, is going to get them results that are tied to their product that they can make decisions with. We're in a position to give that to people immediately. Fast turnaround, make that happen, answer those questions for them quickly. And then, looking beyond that, for those who are able to switch, eBeam has a tremendous amount of installed capacity. So our ability to take that production on and get you ramped up immediately is here. It's installed. It's running today. It's not a project we're putting in later. It's not expansion that we need to do. We've got that capacity today. And in this world of a cliff, I think that's maybe the most important thing we can offer. We can take
Mhm.
folks, business, small, medium, large, we can take that on immediately.
Yeah. Is there any way for you to say the kind of long-term ROI for a company that transitions from E-beam or to E-beam today from ETO versus waiting until 2027?
Yeah, well, I think the most obvious driver of not waiting is there's finite capacity. Okay, so
Mhm.
there's finite capacity in the electron beam world. There's finite capacity in the gamma world. There's lots of folks out working and X-ray. Add that to the mix. They're all out, and there's lots of folks trying to add capacity or in the midst of projects to add capacity. Well, the longer one waits, the more they're going to find themselves in that queue for the rest of the capacity out there, the capacity that's going to be there. And so getting switched now to another provider, whether that's eBeam or somebody else, just gets everybody out of that rush that's going to be there to secure time and secure production space. So I think that's the biggest, avoid the holiday rush kind of thing.
Mm.
The day before Valentine's Day is the wrong day to be buying a Valentine's Day card. So it's very similar to that.
I'm going to have my husband watch this. He's going to need to make notes of it.
I'll see him in the store on the 13th.
There you go. There you go. Um, how long is this relief package available?
Well, for now, at least through probably the first half of 2026.
Okay.
And I think the only thing that would cause us to turn that off is if we're so busy taking care of things, but we certainly feel like we can offer it for a while. But again, the time to get in is now and early, because we know as the cliff approaches, there's going to be more and more interest.
Yeah, I'm imagining a mad rush. Um, how do people start utilizing this? What's their first step? How do they say, yes, I want to take part of this?
Simplest thing, website. We got plenty of places there to click and arrange a meeting, or send a message or reach out, or certainly call us here at eBeam, and that's going to get you to our technical services team, and they will take care of you immediately.
Okay, perfect. Any last minute bits of wisdom you want to add in?
Um, I guess it's like anything else. Procrastination never pays. And I think this is, I think it's very real. We see it coming. We see more and more customers calling to convert. So we just encourage people to think about it. And as you did a very good job of mentioning early on, the point here isn't that all of this is business that comes to eBeam, but the more folks we can identify who can be helped by an alternate means and get out of this press that's going to come here in just a few short months, that's better for our industry. That's certainly better for an important part of our national healthcare system.
Mhm.
Just encourage everybody to talk to us, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction, whether that's us or elsewhere.
Perfect. I love that you said that, whether it's eBeam or elsewhere. That's perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Sam, and thank you all for joining us today on the Q&A. If you have any questions that you want answered in another Q&A, or you want to learn more about the relief package for the ETO Cliff, go ahead and visit the website, ebeamservices.com, or shoot them an email, ebeam@ebeamservices.com. And we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Olivia.